Fondest Halo memory.
Fondest Halo memory as like a kid though was probably just like, I mean it's a big experience, but just the amount of like Halo that I played with like friends in person and family, like the amount of experiences I had with like my dad and my cousins and my best friends and stuff, like a lot of those are packed into like one giant memory of just like, I mean, just really like the best time of my life. Like I always say, like please take me back to '06. This is legit the best year ever, I think.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Tide the Leader, a podcast dedicated to exploring the past, present, and future of competitive Halo. Joining me every week is my duo, Eli the Ninja. Also joining us this week is a very special guest, Mikwen, to discuss the past, present, and future of Halo history. Austin, how's it going?
Good. How about you guys?
Doing good, man. Doing good. We've had a lot of action in the time between HCS Arlington and London, and with London just a few short weeks away, figured it'd be a great time to have you on to discuss again, not only just this current native gaming team that you're on, but really the entire career that you've put together, a top 25 all-time career. So we're very excited to get right to it. Every show starts with the origin story. So tell us a little bit about how you got into gaming and how you got your gamer tag.
So, I mean, I've been a gamer my whole life. There's like old like Polaroid photos of like me and my dad's lap playing like Jaguar with him. Yeah, pretty much since I've been aware, I've played video games, and I mean, really got into it probably like late '90s, playing like EverQuest with my dad, like MMOs and stuff like that. And then him and I mean, we tried like every MMO. We were playing like Star Wars Galaxy, Dark Age of Camelot, which is where my gamer tag comes from.
Was that a specific character in that game, or?
No, so that game had like family trees, and my dad's name was Milwin, and I was like, what, 6 years old, and I just looked at the keyboard and I just deleted the L and did the key right next to it. So,
no way.
and then yeah, it just kind of stuck. Like I've had it ever since. And he's not even like Milwin was like, I think he auto generated it maybe. But yeah, so it's super simple, nothing special.
That's pretty cool though.
Not a huge like thought process behind it.
When did you ultimately get into Halo? Was it like right away when Halo 1 came out? Was that something that your dad was interested in as well?
Yeah, so my dad pulled me out of school when the Xbox came out.
What a dad.
Yeah, I thought there was like a problem, and he just like pulled the Xbox out from behind like the truck seat, and he was like, yeah, and then he like showed me Halo, and I didn't know what it was actually, and he's like, yeah, we're gonna play this all day. I'm like, all right. So like him and I like it's like split screen, or yeah, it was split screen. Did the campaign all day.
Was that CE or Halo 2?
Yeah, it was Halo CE, and then we would play that like occasionally, and like I say play it, but it was like we'd play like Sidewinder 2v2s and not even use like pistols and stuff. It was like, we had no idea what was going on. And then I didn't really play a lot of CE. I actually really got into like Warcraft 3. Played a lot of Warcraft 3 from that time frame. And then Halo 2 dropped. We had another like snow day for school. And we played, me, my dad, his twin brother, and my cousin played like Halo 2 all day that day. And then yeah, ever since then it's like I've just played it my whole life.
That's awesome. Yeah, Warcraft 3, that's a throwback. I played the heck out of that game too. I played like StarCraft 2, Brood War, and then yeah, Warcraft. Yeah, the custom like use map settings. There's like tower defense games and all that stuff. That was so much fun back then.
Yeah, the TDs were what I was really into, like Winter Mall, and there's a couple others that were like the DBZ arenas and stuff like that. I was super into those.
That's so sick.
You're known in Halo as a great shot, great sniper, but when I think of you, I think of this analytical mastermind that really focuses on the min-max. And so that's really interesting to hear that your origin story starts off in things like MMOs, where finding the optimal build is and the most efficient way to play the game is the way to play the game. Is that a big part of your current adaptation to Halo and the way you look at strategy even in 4v4s?
To an extent. I mean, a lot of it's just like trying to keep it as simple as possible. Because yeah, I mean, that like trying to min-max in like competitive Halo is a lot harder because it's so situational. It's so split second that it's like you're basically relying on instinct. So there's not really a way to min-max it. There's just a way to like minimize, right? Like mistakes and stuff. Yeah, like that. The min-maxing stuff is mostly like, yeah, it's like numbers and builds and ARPGs and stuff like that. I'm way more analytical in those games, I think, than I would probably be in Halo. Halo, most of the time, it's like sometimes I'll literally like sometimes I'll notice that we're losing because it's like, oh, we're just like not winning our fights. Like it's that simple. That's like sometimes it's that simple.
I think you were the one that was talking about the new phase roster, and you're like, well, they don't have an objective problem because they just kill so much. It's hard to do objective if you're dead. Like sometimes it really is that simple. Like you just got to start winning more fights or team shooting together.
Yeah, and you know it's a slippery slope because it's like if you do stop winning those fights consistently, then suddenly it's like you're not objectively efficient, and it becomes really hard to win games. That's what happened on the Envy team. We just killed everything, so we just like objective happened, and then everyone got a lot better at the game, so it was a little bit closer. And then suddenly it was like we were in tighter games, and we're like, how the fuck do we win this game?
When was your first introduction to like MLG and like competitive Halo in those early days?
Yes. I mean, it was my dad, but it was like he showed me Fatality playing Quake, and he said like this stuff will be a sport one day. This is probably like 2002, 2003.
Wow.
So like I was playing like FPS games with him as well. Like we would always have like LAN parties, and then we would play like Serious Sam and Painkiller and like stuff like that together. So yeah, that's what it was. Fatality won like I think $150,000 playing Painkiller. My dad, like, we were super into Painkiller at the time, so he showed me that. So I started playing Halo, and my understanding was that, like, all that was just on PC. Like, anything that was, like, competitive was on PC. Like, because I knew about Counter-Strike, and I knew about, like, Tribes. My dad was super into Tribes, if you guys remember that game. And that had, like, a competitive league. I don't think it had, like, tournaments, but it had, like, a competitive baked-in league, like Clan League or something.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really know about MLG during 2005 or 2004. I was playing a lot of Halo, and there was this tournament at this bar in Kalamazoo, Michigan, for like Western Michigan kids or something.
At a bar.
Yeah, it was like a legit like pub, and I was probably like a 10 or 11. But my aunt, her boyfriend was going to Western Michigan, and he was playing against me in Halo occasionally. He'd like come over on like the weekends and stuff. And his friends would come too, and I would just fucking like own them, right? And I'm 10, and they're like, "What is going on?" He's like, he has to play in this, so that I like signed up for it, and it was like newbie, dude. It was like Ascension, like SMG starts, like at Rumble Pit, right?
Yeah, of course.
And I win it, and I don't even remember what I got, but one of the guys there was like, you should look into playing like MLG," and I was like, "What is MLG?" So then I asked my dad, like, what is it? I was like, about it, and he looked it up, and he was like, oh, they have a tournament in Chicago. So yeah, it would have been 06. And so my dad took me to Chicago 06. And then, yeah, from there, it was like, I knew about it, started to learn the history and everything. I started to, like, go to Halo Dash Pro and use, like, Mythica and, like, all that stuff, right? H2F, like, going to Halo 2 Forum and all that type of stuff. So, yeah, that's where I really got into it probably, was, like, early 06, late 05. Whenever Chicago was, probably about 4 or 5 months before that.
Yeah, that was a good tournament for me. I actually got top 8 in the FFA at that event, and I think I remember you telling me at some point that like back then you were like watching our videos. Like I think you watched like my video, Makowski, probably like Walshy, Best Man. Like I was teaming with Best Man at that event. Actually, yeah, it was me, Best Man, Brad Fox, and Quick Death was our squad, and I think we got like top 24 in teams. But me and Best Man both got pro FFA. I got top 8. So it makes sense if that was your first MLG event. You're like keeping track of who all the best players were at the time, probably watching the Ogres, and I would imagine those were like your main inspirations. Like who back then, who do you think you like kind of looked up to the most as like a young gamer?
I really love Shook One's montages.
Oh yeah, dude.
So like I was like, like Shook was like probably like the first like kind of inspiration there, and then once I started competing, it this is later obviously, but like once I started like truly competing, because there's a pretty big gap between like Halo 2 and even Halo 3. Because I didn't really start competing until like late 09, like fully. Like I went to some tournaments, but that's when I like actually started trying. So it'd probably be Ola was like the biggest, was like the player that was like the most interesting to me. There's Ola and like Walshy obviously is a big inspiration. I was from Michigan, so it's like you know, Walsh was kind of like the first big superstar of esports. So the fact that he was from Michigan and like, you know, we would talk about like going to Livewire in Livonia because it was the LAN center that Dave was a part of or whatever, and we'd hope that we go to a tournament and Dave would be there. It was like probably Shook, then Walsh, then Ola would probably be the three.
Shook on 3. I remember because he was making waves in his. He was being mentioned in the local news. I'll famously remember the TV casters saying his name incorrectly.
Shook on 3.
Go back and watch Shook on 3's montage. I'm sure Kills will probably edit it in real quick magically. And he had that Paul Wall song, Ice in My
Take a deep
Grill.
breath.
Take a deep breath. And he went third person, swung the camera around, which no one at this time had ever seen Halo in third person. It was a first person shooter.
How the did you do that? How did you edit something like that? Did you do that? No.
What happened?
That's
at the ending? I
ridiculous.
don't remember what happened.
No, that is ridiculous. No, there's no way he did that. I'm gonna look at that again.
And I remember this was 05, 06. Like that was before Kim Kardashian broke the internet. Shook on 3 did with that moment. Do you remember that pretty fondly, Austin?
Yeah, that was like that was sick. That's the one that I think a lot of people who are into montages point out because we were like, how did he just do that? And then obviously Dave's like all the 3D rendering prior to that was like pretty monumental. Yeah, dude, I miss the age of montages. I miss the age of like simple montages that weren't over edited. They had their moments, and they were just like all gameplay and music.
Right.
And they weren't trying to be like so syncopated, and like it was just like fun. It was fun, and it was. I mean, like I remember, like I forget the name of it, but like they're like Ogre 1 and Ogre 2, and like the disgusting montage or whatever.
Yep.
And then, like Windows Movie Maker, like the red text.
Yep.
Yep.
And like just like, but they're playing music that like I listen to, right? So I was like relatable in a lot of ways.
The music was a huge part of it, yeah. And you're right, I agree. The hardcore editing in those montages was syncing the drum snare with a snipe or a shot, right? And that's all it took. Now I watch montages and I'm like, did he hit the snipe? I don't even know. It's like sometimes editors will literally show the frame before the snipe gets hit and then the frame after, but not the actual frame the snipe gets hit. And it's to sync things up, like you said, to get really hypercritical with the editing. But in my opinion, that's been a little bit of the reason why I feel like montages have maybe fallen off. You don't get to see the gameplay.
Yeah. And it's also like your eyes are twitching, dude. It's like there's such hard cuts in between it. So the
Great
montage
point.
era kind of died in like 2011, I feel like, for sure. Ninja did his, we did our dualtage, and then I like had like a reach montage or something. But yeah, it's like I still have like CJ hitting me up. CJ knew. He's like, "Yo, you got clips? Like, let's make a montage." Because I do like CJ and Muggsy. I love their editing style because it was like pretty edited, but they showed the gameplay. Yeah, it started to get out of control. And if you go watch some other games montages, it's like a minute long and it has like 48 clips in it. You're like, how do I even watch this?
That's so telling, man. You're right, because you can't relate to it as a player, because that was the coolest part about watching Eli or maybe even myself's montage, is that it's like, okay, wow, I could do this, right? Like this is what it looks like when you play Halo 2. That's a great point. I haven't even really thought about it like that.
Yeah, I think they probably like the most edited montage in Halo 2 is probably like Abused Goats. Or it was Lux. Like those were probably the most editing. But they weren't even like that edited. Like Abused Goats just had like the medals
pop the counter.
The counter, like that was sick. And then it was Lux was like pretty like edited, but it wasn't so hard cutty. And then, but like to this day, I still think like Dave's Walshy's montage is like or Straight's, like one of those two is like the best edited montage. I would say Dave's just because it was like the first to kind of make that wave in that sense.
Right.
But yeah, the straight ripping montage was pretty incredible too.
Yeah, I feel like anybody that like was part of Halo 2 forum back in the day, like the scene where Walshy fires the snipe bullet and then it does the 3D pan around the bullet, it just lives rent free in everyone's head that was like around back then, like when that montage dropped.
Yeah, I mean, like that's not easy to do, that type of 3D rendering. That's essentially, I mean, that's straight up animation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like that's a lot of effort for a Halo montage to just do like legit like animation for the intro.
Shout out Peridius.
Yeah, he's the man. He was at a TLN when I was there.
Shout out to Furion as well. Furion did the editing on mine. I always liked the way he edited. That's why Siri and I reached out to him. It was like simple but like effective. It went with the music. Furon was a goat. He still is a goat. He's still making videos to this day.
Yeah, he's got Pokemon, right? I think I saw.
He's got a Pokemon like store that he sells packs and opens them on stream. Yeah, he's doing a lot of cool stuff.
Shout out to the Guardian. Was my first editor, which is ironic because I ended up becoming a Guardian like 10, 15 years later with Destiny. And then shout out to Silly Goose, whose edit on my Reach montage was actually his last edit ever. That I didn't know that it was his final swan song at the time. I waited a year and a half for him to edit that video because he was such a goated editor already that he had so many people lined up. So yeah, shout out to all these editors of the past, because without them, you know, it would just be gameplay raw, which you can just upload to YouTube, and that's just a, you know, that's just a playthrough, right? The editing and the right amount, the right touch, the right subtle touch of editing is what made the montage era so special, which I think is a great point you made, Austin.
Yeah, I mean, it was like Mythica too. People would just upload whatever, Halo 2 forum, and then it's like there were so many like things that branched too, because it was like you had your pro montages, and that kind of started it, and then you guys had like your people who were like on the brink of becoming pro, so like probably like you, Eli, like right there, but then your montage kind of gives you some like boost your name a little bit. Then you had like people who were straight up montages kids that came out, and then you had like the 1v1 montage kids like Tweak and Reed 18 and
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember the other guys, but like those became my favorite montages, the 1v1 montages. I went from like that, but the 1v1 montages became like I wasn't playing a lot of 1v1s, but the way they were like made was like my favorite. I don't know why. It was just a lot of it was staged, and you know, like going back and watching it, like
right,
oh my God, it's so staged. But it was like as like a young kid, I was like, okay, this is actually like those became my favorite for some reason.
I was looking back at your wiki, and like I already know a lot of your early career because I remember watching your rise, but it seems like from like a competitive standpoint, your initial breakout tournaments were first in those FFAs. You got second in one, ended up getting first in another. You had like a string of like top eights in FFAs, but how would you say that FFA specifically impacted like your early career and beyond?
So that era of H3, it was only like the big FFA, so pros didn't play on them, so they weren't as like they didn't give a lot of validity to the player, right? Like back in H2, like if you did well in that, like you played against pros and stuff. So like if you got like top 12, top 16, top 8, like however whatever placing, I don't think you could get top 12, but if you got that, like people knew like okay, he beat some good people. He had to have. Like there's no way you get that far in that. But in the big flex stuff, it was like kind of like whatever. But the cool thing about the big flex stuff is they had like online tournaments, and if you won them, they'd pay for your trip to the tournament. So I was like 16, and my parents had been like super supportive and like right behind me, but my mom like kind of came to me and she's like, hey, like, you know, we're doing a lot of these. Like at this point, I think so. This is Columbus 2010. So I had done Columbus 09, Dallas 09, and Anaheim 09, and my mom, and my dad pretty much footed the bill for that. Like my dad gave some extra cash, but my mom footed a lot of the bill. So like Columbus 2010 rolls around, I'm like 16 years old, and she's like, hey, like this is getting expensive. Like if you want to continue to do this, like you're gonna probably have to like pick up a part-time job with like your grandpa or something, just something easy, like family job. Well, there's this Big Flex online thing, so like I could win that, and it would also be like a free trip for that and to Dallas. And she goes, okay. So I plan that, I win that. That gets me the trip to Columbus. I get second in that FFA, but then I have a free trip to Raleigh. So at that point, my mom was like, okay, we'll go to Dallas. And then we go to Dallas, and I win that one. Or sorry, not Dallas, Raleigh. She pays for Raleigh. Go to Raleigh. We drive down to Raleigh. I win the Raleigh FFA, and then yeah, go to Dallas. But the Dallas one was weird because it was Halo 3 FFAs, but Reach had come out. So I'd only been playing Reach. So like I played that FFA, and I think I got like 5th, but I hadn't played Halo 3 in like 2 months. But yeah, that basically gave me the funding to go to the tournaments, and then when I won that online one, somebody uploaded it to YouTube, and Elitist4 saw it, and he messaged me, and that's how like I got on Give Me My Money. Was Samuel said like let's run with him, and then so me, Legend, Reliable, and Elitist teamed. We got 19th at Columbus. Then we broke up, did a little bit of team hopping at that point. Then me and Sammy got back together, got top 8 of the exhibition, which gave us the 16th seed. And then going into Reach is when we picked up Allen and Twin Savior. Yeah,
sounds about right. Yeah,
and then we went to a bunch of TLNs, and we were actually getting like a lot better. kind of blew it at that turn at Dallas, but yeah, I mean that's when like the pro part started.
What was it for you that finally clicked in 4v4s? Because you had immediate success in free for alls, took a little bit longer in 4v4s. What was your aha moment?
I mean, honestly, like maybe a little bit of ego, but like I was playing with like high school friends, like those first like 3 tournaments in 09. Like the only reason why I didn't play any of 08. I wasn't the biggest fan of Halo 3. So when Halo 3 came out, I just like kind of didn't play it. I actually really got into this game called Age of Conan, which is an MMO. Started playing that game nonstop. Like all of 08, that's all I did. Like I literally sat on the couch. I played during the summer, played Age of Conan and watched Mallrats every day. Like that's all I did. I have a really good friend named Nate, and he like plays Halo, Rippin', and he always like talks crap for me, like always.
Rippin' the Montage kid?
No. So
Okay.
Rippin' X2.
Gotcha.
He like streams and plays some Halo. You might match him in the playlist occasionally, but yeah, he's been like my best friend since like 4th grade, and he always like runs his mouth for me, right? Like, cause like one of those like
He's your hype man.
living vicariously through me. So I played a lot of Halo 2 with him. He'd come over every day. We had like two tubes. We play Halo 2 all the time, and he was running like we get to high school. Yeah, it's 9th grade, so we're freshmen, and there's like all these like senior guys that play Halo, and they're like. There's this one guy that's like saying how he's the best in school, and my friend Nate is like, nope, you're not, and starts like running his mouth about me, and I like hadn't played, and so I was like, Nate, dude, I haven't played the game in like a year. He's like, yeah, it doesn't matter. He's like, you'll still probably destroy them. I was like, okay. So that guy like is like mad at me because like his ego's hurt, so he decides to play me, and yeah, I mean I beat him like 15-0 like 4 times in a row, and then.
Oh.
And then the other guy, like the other one was like, I can get a kill. He tries to play me. I 15-0 him over and over again. Like we all become friends at that point. And there was a couple of them that were like pretty decent that didn't like get mad about this stuff because they actually knew that they were decent at the game, so they didn't really care. So like we started going to like Grand Land and Grand Rapids, going to a lot of those lands. And funny enough, that's where I met TJ, because he was going to that too. After Columbus, I met Testify, and that was like my first like duo, and then we started to try to like figure out 4v4 stuff. And I think we got like 6th round at Anaheim, and then Dallas was like weird. I think I just went just to go kind of type deal. But then the Chicago Combine was like probably the biggest one that like there was the online thing. There was the online thing that happened, then Chicago happened. I went to Chicago and I did really good in the FFA. I knocked out Adrenaline, who won the one before, and then I was like playing 4v4s, and I was with all those high school guys, and I remember we were playing Ninja's team, and one of them goosed in a Slayer, on Pit Slayer against them, but
oh no.
But I like Hugo, Swift Kill, Revamp, and like all the Victoria's Secret guys, and then Randa, and I'm trying to think who else. They all like watched me in some series. I don't remember what it was. But apparently I was playing really well, and they all started like talking about me. I didn't know this though. I found this out like years later that like apparently like Revamp said that like he was sitting there watching me. He's like, this guy's the best shot I've ever seen, and like started telling people to come watch, and that's how like, or maybe it was Fugo. Might have been Fugo. One of the Victoria's Secret guys. I don't want to like throw them under the bus, but somebody was like, you need to watch this guy. Like I don't know who this kid is, but he's frying. I turned around and they were all there, and I was like, oh, what's up? Hi. And I like didn't know any of them. So that was like probably the breakthrough into that, like right on the brink, like that the guys that can maybe get top 16 but are getting like top 20 pretty consistently, and they kind of are that bridge for players of like this is how you play 4v4, and they just like, you know, I don't know why they couldn't break in. I'm sure like, you know, there's those people who like have a really good brain for the game but aren't the best shots, so they just can't really get like top 16 or top 12. Probably that, and then teaming with Sammy, Elitist, like is where it all started to kind of start to come together. Just learning like how to communicate, how to have like decent teamwork, how to like not just play for trades and kills every single time. Like as important as that is to do, it's not the right play all the time. It was like Sammy was the first person that taught me like just go die. Like it was like Pit. I spawned court. He's like, lift up and die, please. He's like, I don't want to spawn court, so I just lifted up and died, and we don't spawn court. And he's like, that's good death right there. I was like, yeah, I never thought about that.
I guess we're going to skip ahead a little bit here because you kind of spent a lot of time getting like top 12s, top 16s. And then like it just feels like as you look through across your wiki, you're just getting better and better. And then you get to Halo 5 and you find some of the greatest success that you've had throughout your entire career. You're on that EnVyUs roster, and it had a couple iterations. I think you were with L-Town at one point, and then ultimately with Snipedown, Pistola, and Huke. And that roster stuck together for a long time. Was that because you guys were just so dominant? It was easy to stick together, and you guys just kind of all believed in each other. Talk to me through that time period in your career.
Beginning of H5 was really stressful. Originally, I was on Liquid. It was me, Ninja, Chig, and Ace. And because in H2A, I was teaming with Richie and APG, and we were actually really good. Like we were right there, right? So going into H5, I thought that we would keep that team, build on that, and do really well. So going into H5, they let us know that they're going to go team with Ola and Formal was going to do both. He's going to play COD and H5. And I was like, there's no way that happens. But so I'm on that Liquid team, and sure enough, I signed my contract with Liquid, and about a month later, they message me and say, hey, Formal's not going to play Halo. Will you team with us? I'm like, oh my god, dude. So we do that. So it's me, Ola, Hines, and APG. That team falls apart. Like, for a lot of reasons. None of it needs to be public. It was bad. It was just messy. I'm supposed to go to Renegades, but then Ola's kind of left out to dry. So I made kind of a, like, you know, there's sometimes you make decisions in this like world where it's a bad decision for your like placement, but it's like a good moral decision. And a lot of people don't like to do that type of stuff. But based off of everything that happened and the stuff that Ola was kind of going through at that time, I decided to stay with Ola. Our team wasn't very good. We don't qualify for the first Worlds. And Ola kind of goes MIA for a few months, and I'm still like grinding the game, playing a lot of 8s. And at this point, I'm playing a lot of 8s against like L-Town and stuff, and L-Town hits me up. He goes, yo, I want to team with you. So I'm like, okay, cool. Worlds ends. Ola was kind of MIA, but I get a scrim set up, and the first one was me, Ola, Hines, and Rain. Penguin Rain. It was Penguin Rain. And I hit up Ola. He hadn't played the game in a few months. I was like, yo, we have a scrim. So Ola gets on, we scrim. Penguin decides to go to Renegades, I think, at that point. But we decide that we do want to team with Rain. But L-Town wanted to team with Eco, Stellar, and Suspector, which in hindsight is a pretty crazy team. But we play them, me, Ola, Rain, and Randa, and smoke them. So then Sal hits me up. He's like, yo, let's team. I want to team with you now. So then we pick up L-Town. We grind really hard. We get back into, like, you know, we got pretty lucky. Since Allegiance broke up, they did this like cool thing at PAX East, where all the teams that had one player from Allegiance played for the Pro League spot. So we play in that. It was good land reps. We end up losing to EG, and then we start grinding. We get to and we end up getting into the Pro League. And when I say like that, this was like a climb. Like we were really bad when we started. And we got pretty good. We finished getting third at the finals. EG doesn't make the finals. And then Huke gets second at the finals. And after the finals, me and Ola decided to team with Snipedown. So we dropped Rain at that point, picked up we dropped L-Town, picked up Snipedown, and we're keeping 10. But then my dad calls me, and he goes, hey, I just got a message on Team Beyond from this guy named KG Dutchy. And it says that it's Huke's brother and that he wants to team with you guys. And I was like, what? So I like hit up Tyler and I'm like, yo, is this true? He goes, yeah, it is. So then we got it. Like we hit up Hastro. We're like, yo, Huke wants to team with us. And we're like, he's probably going to have a pretty hefty buyout. But like he can end up playing COD for you. So like, it's probably a pretty good deal. Like we're trying to sell it so that it actually happens. Right. Hash was like, yeah, no, I'm down. So we make that team. And yeah, right from the moment that team started, it was like, scrims were super easy. We didn't really drop games in scrims because we didn't play optics, or I guess they were probably still CLG at the time. Tox, whatever, snakebite in them. We didn't scrim them for a while, so we were pretty much just scrimming everybody else, and we weren't really dropping many games. You could tell that we were really good. We go to OC, and then we play, and that we get second. Good land reps, and then we end up winning the Pro League finals, going to Worlds, getting second, and then we end up winning Daytona. And then, like, this is one thing that's like pretty frustrating about that, or like upsetting about that team, is that I think we won 2 more Pro Leagues, but we got 4th in both the finals. So it was like we were the best team going into that LAN and just kind of fell apart. Like at the tournament. One of them was when we knew that Kyler was going back to COD, so there was kind of that weird, like, this is the end, like, let's not blow it type deal.
Yeah, you seem more willing than others to give COD kids a chance, right? You mentioned Formal earlier, who you didn't end up teaming with. Obviously, you took his spot. Huke, who you ended up teaming with, and even as recently as Halo Infinite, Neptune. What is it about Call of Duty or that transferability of skills? And talk us through that thought process from a roster building perspective.
Because I did play COD for a little bit, so I kind of got to know like a lot of people from COD. Not necessarily like the top players, some of them, but mostly like those people who were kind of on the rise. So when Huke decided when he was just playing Halo for fun, a couple of the COD guys told me like, "Yo, that guy is like he's different, like he's special, like he's really young, but he's special." So I was paying attention to it like at the beginning of H5, and I don't remember, but somehow he ended up on like a team that was okay, and they ended up like super overperforming, and largely in part to him. And somehow he got linked up with Boo Boo, and at that point he just kind of proved that he was like one of the best players in the game, like naturally. So there wasn't we weren't really taking a chance on him at that point because he was probably like objectively the best player outside of that Tox team. I would say, like at that point, like that like when he was on Enigma 6, like if you shut him down, you won the game. That guy was insane at Halo 5. Yeah, there wasn't a lot of chance taken on him, and like the only thing that was like unknown about him was like attitude and like comms and stuff and that type of stuff. But then like I hit up Enable, and Enable's like, "Nah, that kid's fine. Don't worry about him at all." Because he had teamed with them. I think Huke is the only one that's done the COD 2 Halo switch really successfully. Yeah, I don't want to be disingenuous there, but I'm pretty sure that's probably the only one. Like it's mostly Halo 2 COD. Not a lot of COD players have come to Halo and actually seen a lot of success. One, largely in part, they don't need to like come over to our scene. So where we had situations where we needed to go to, like some of us were like, yeah, we gotta go play COD if we want to play competitive shooters anymore.
That was what Formal said last week, right, Eli? I think he said the exact same thing, just about.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, like that doesn't mean that they're not capable. Like I've played like Halo against like Clay, and like the guys shoot straight, right? They all have good centering and they all shoot straight, so they would learn it. They would figure it out. But yeah, it was like Huke was the rare exception because he wasn't allowed to compete in COD when he was the year prior, and he was getting like second, third, like placing super high, and then he's not allowed to play because the rule was you needed to be 16 or maybe it was 18. And so he was like, I'll just go play Halo for 2 years. And
Halo 5 was mature?
No, Halo 5 was teen. So you were you were allowed to play it at there was a rule because of ESL that was 18, but we got it like we fought for it to get changed for Shotzi. Because like the game's T, so it should be 13 plus. So then Shotzi was able to compete, which was obviously really cool.
It looks like maybe towards the end of Halo 5, at some point you end up kind of stepping away from competing, and then you instead start working at the studio 343 on the game itself. Was that more of like a financial decision, like, hey, this is a more steady, reliable income, or was it one of like shifting passion or interest at the time?
Obviously, I grew up as a gamer. I was really into games. I was really into game dev. I was really interested in how games were made. So I always told myself, like in my teenage years, that like if gaming led to a point that I could get into the games industry, I would take that opportunity. So that popped up around London, and I remember Tashi like kind of approached me with the idea of it, and I was like, nah, I don't know, and like I'll see, I'll think on it. So I'm like thinking on it, and then like I'm starting to hear things from some friends that like there's gonna be a pretty big gap between Halo 5 and Halo Infinite. So I'm thinking like, okay, this is probably going to be the best time to do it because by the time that game comes out, I'm probably going to be like 28 years old. Like it's just probably time to move on. And then passion was kind of like, I was losing it. Like I was just kind of like over it. I was really into like doing anything but playing Halo at that point.
Yeah, sharing as much as you can. What was that experience like working with 343, and how much of an impact did you feel like you made on the game itself?
I didn't like hate it, but it did kind of like make me realize that I don't enjoy game dev because it kind of takes the magic out of the games, right? You kind of learn how things are baked, so you're like, nah, that's not as cool anymore. It was like pretty upsetting because it was like I was so excited for it, but it was such a letdown in that sense. But I mean, it's probably one of the best decisions I ever made. You're working in an office like that with so many people, so many different types of people, and you're working on such a big project that, like, you know, you always hear like the stereotypical, like, games aren't easy to make. Like, once you actually see it, like, you see how difficult it is. Some of that is like, you could fix it. Like, some of it's just like people, right? Like, it's just like like, obviously you have a lot of people working together. There's always going to be disagreements and stuff like that. But sometimes games are a little bit harder to make, I feel like, just because of like hubris and ego and things like that. So there was a bit of that going on, and especially like toward, like, for our team, we're the pros, right? So like, we're coming in, we're new to game dev, and we believe that, like, and I will say that the West did a really good job putting together a team that was pretty dynamic and had a lot of different opinions. So it wasn't like we were like a hive mind. It's not like we were coming in like, oh, do this. It was like we would come to like pretty sound conclusions and compromises as a team together, and then we deliver that information. All of that was like a really good learning experience. You know, it's like you hear that stuff, you see that stuff, you work in that type of situation, and it just makes you better at communication. It makes you like just more patient, like all that type of stuff. And then, you know, the cool part was, you know, you do get to see how the game was made. That is cool, but for me, it just kind of took a little bit of the magic out of it, like the playing it. I remember one thing. One of the map designers pulled out like an old modded original Xbox, but it was a dev kit of the OG Xbox, and it was Halo 2, and it had a bunch of Halo 2 maps that never launched.
Wow.
How many maps?
There was like 4 of them. Max Hoberman ended up showing some of them. One of them was Prisoner, but symmetrical. Prisoner times 2, but symmetrical.
Oh, so the LL to make a square.
Yeah.
What?
So I think Max Hoberman ended up tweeting that one out. Max Hoberman ended up showing a few of them that I ended up seeing, but it was really cool. Like, just stuff like that, right? It's like you wouldn't expect to see that, but like he just found it. Like, I don't even remember what he said. I think he just like found an old Xbox dev kit, OG Xbox dev kit somewhere. I don't know. He might have got it on eBay. I don't even know. And he just like brought it in just to like look, like, just let's see some history, you know? So there's some cool stuff there. I think if things continued on, like if COVID never happened, I probably never leave. But once COVID happened, it just like Seattle's already tough to live in if you have any type of mental illness. Add that in and you can't leave your house, it gets really bad. And then, you know, the game's development cycle got really stressful from that point on. It was already stressful when we weren't working externally. Then we had the external option, and then we had that the demo was poorly received, and it's like it just became like this, like, you know, there's people I talk to at that studio that have 20 plus years of game dev, and one of them I really respect, and he was like, this is the hardest project I have ever worked on, and I worked on multiple games that were completely canned. So like
Wow.
He was like joking with me. He's like, you picked the worst one to do. Like, like, yeah, I guess. I don't regret any of it though. Like it was nothing but a positive for me as a person. It just, you know, the only like sour part was, I mean, there's like 2 sour parts. It's obviously like that game dev didn't work out, and then I also just like learned that like if you're too close to the project, and especially if it's a AAA game, if you're too close to the project, it's never gonna go well.
Yeah, it's really a shame when these companies are just making the vast majority of the decisions based on the numbers, like you said. Like, it's just distilled down to, okay, how can we maximize microtransactions? How can we maximize players? How can we hook them to where their dopamine levels are adequately, you know, hooked for amount of time, and you lose what you called the magic, which is so true. Like, there's just so many games that it just feels different when you play them. I remember the first time I played Fortnite, I actually kind of like, I was like, I'm feeling something that I don't remember feeling since Halo 2. And it's like, that was the early Fortnite days. And I'm like, this is the same feeling that like I was excited when I got off work or like whatever I was doing to play the game, because it was like fresh and it was just like pure fun and joy at the time. But nowadays it's like, the way it's built, it's like you can kind of see through the bullshit if you've seen so much. Like, you load it up and you're like, oh, this game's just trying to get me to buy this in-game item for $30. And, you know, I don't know. You can just feel it, man. And it is tragic. And I think it does suck for the people at the studio that really do have that passion for the game, but like maybe they don't have as much power as they would like over certain decisions.
Yeah, and I will say that like one thing, and I think it's even better nowadays, like a lot of the leadership of the studio at the time really did empower our team. And I've always kind of said this, like we did have like a pretty large voice in the room on a lot of stuff. And you know, I've said it before, it's like if that wasn't the case, like yeah. If I was to ever go back to it, it'd be a small team, people who are aligned, a very passion project, because yeah, it's like you said, it's not about opening the game and feeling like you're like at like a cyberpunk like store, right? It's like everything is like a gotcha game. Yeah, it's like a kiosk. It's like you open it up, it's like, all right, there's one page of microtransactions. Oh, different page of microtransactions. It's just like there's all that.
Yeah.
That's all from phone games. But then there's just also the piece of like this regurgitated like, let's just like, here's this game. We're just gonna throw it out 100 times over. There's that piece too. You know, I do want to see like change in the industry. That was kind of like when I grew up. That era, like games were changing pretty dramatically, and they were doing things that like you had never seen. It was like, you know, you couldn't play a first-person shooter on console. Like you could play GoldenEye, but it was like, obviously it was fun for us, but the controls are horrible.
They're the worst.
And then Halo comes out and develops twin stick shooters, and you know everyone starts to copy them in a lot of ways. But you're getting a lot of like different games that were really fun and being evolved. And then Gears is a thing, so third person shooters start to blow up a little bit more than they probably had in the past. And you know, really during that time, the Grand Theft Auto, like really revolutionizing stuff. MMOs, WoW, revolutionizing a lot of stuff. It was like, it just felt like every year something happened that was like, holy shit, the world's changing. Like games are changing and the world's changing. And now it's like game drops, you're like, whatever. When I first played BattleNet on Warcraft 3, I'm typing to other people. Like, and I'm talking to a kid from like Sweden. Like it was like mind blowing to me. And then Halo 2 comes out and I'm talking over voice to this person. Right? And then it's like, then WoW comes around, and then people are making lifelong friendships on that and experiences on that. And the first viral video really came from like WoW in a lot of ways.
Leroy Jenkins.
Yeah, like or CS, like Headshot or Leroy Jenkins. Like those are probably the two first viral videos I remember, other than End of This World. Like those are like the three,
right? Yeah,
like that I remember on E-Bomb's World. It's been the same thing like over like the last decade. It feels like, especially.
So if you could do it all over again, would you have still worked at the studio and gave up that first year of competitive play in Halo Infinite, or do you wish you had the chance to start competing at Halo Infinite's launch?
No, I wouldn't redo it. Like I said, like a lot of the stuff from the studio was like, it gave me a lot of stuff that I would have never learned. I learned a lot of things that I just would have never learned. It gave me a lot of life experience. And it just like straight up made me a better person in a lot of ways. Obviously that year off sucked, and I mean it's like it is what it is, and but no, like that the studio was a fantastic experience in a lot of ways for me, for my growth as a human.
Fast forwarding to season 2 of HCS, when you're valid and able to compete, you must have been chomping at the bit. You guys go on a historic run. You guys matched that 5K run of 13 years prior, I think it was. Same location, just about the same venue at Charlotte. Top 4 from the open bracket. Talk me through your reintroduction into competitive Halo, what it took to get you out of retirement, because that's like starting up an engine from cold, right? And you're going right into the thick of season 2, where everyone knows the meta, everyone knows how to play the game. Talk us through that.
I was chomping at the bit, but at the same time, I was like pretty like this is gonna be hard. And yeah, I don't know. We were online prior to the tournament. We didn't look very good. Like we were not playing that well. I think all of us were kind of just like, let's just go to the tournament and like do our best. And yeah, I mean, it just worked out. It was crazy. And then we kind of snowballed, and that team started to be pretty good and doing really well in the online stuff. And then everything just kind of got derailed in a lot of ways, and definitely frustrating in that sense, because it started off so good, and then it just like kind of was a train wreck afterwards.
Talk us through reuniting with Barcode, right? And how that all came to be, because it seemed like going into this season, you guys weren't going to be teaming together, but then magically as Visa gets approved.
I mean, he was always on the like in the conversation. We just me, Brad, and Kay just decided to like let's try to go for like a little bit of a Hail Mary here. Obviously, it didn't work out, and then at that point, we we're like, let's just get Alex. It was a really short turnaround though, so like, you know, Alex is like awesome for like how much he sacrifices for this game, like going across the world just to play, and I mean, he's absolutely insane in the game when he pops off, and when he's able to actually practice consistently and play at the NA level consistently, like he gets very, very good. So yeah, I mean, there's really nothing but positive things to say about Alex. I think if you've met him or hang out with him, you just know how like that's who he is, even in scrims and stuff. So he's just fun to be around. He's just a good person.
Yeah, probably the brightest and smilingest face and just aura of all the Halo competitors is 100% Barcode. Talk me through from a philosophical perspective, because Eli and I have a lot of experience in the last couple of years building rosters and having some success with them. It felt like with that roster last year, you guys, or you specifically, went out and let me find the best player in Mexico and the best player in Australia, and then I'll link up with another veteran like Gilkey. I mean, that's what it looked like at the surface level. Was it simply that, or was it a little bit deeper?
No, it was honestly, I mean, credit to Alex. Gilk and Alex were obviously teaming on G2.
G2.
Yeah. And so like they wanted to keep teaming, but then Alex really wanted to team with Ozbay. And so like and at that time too, like Dean had been talking with Ozbay, and Ozbay was interested in being a part of Native. So like it was kind of coming together in that sense. So yeah, I didn't really think about it like that. Well, it was like at that point, it's like, you know, you're coming back to the game. A lot of the top teams are locked. A lot of the people you teamed with historically have a team that they're doing well with, so they're not going to make a change. So it's like,
yeah,
at that point, you have to think about just teaming with like the best people you possibly can, and hoping that kind of works out, especially in this game with like chemistry and stuff. So yeah, I mean, it was basically like the people who didn't have a team, and then those were probably the best options at that time, outside of if we were to poach somebody from somewhere. But that was like the easiest one to just like have us all come together. Nobody's under contract, build a team real quick. So yeah, I mean, credit to Alex though, because he was the one that really pushed for Rosebay. And yeah, I really didn't think about it like that, but I mean, it's funny that it like kind of came together that way, and I mean, it was definitely a really cool story.
So yeah, I guess we're talking about the recent roster here. Is it feels like it's gone through some tumultuous times. You did recently get top 6 in the last Open, and then now after maybe underperforming, I don't even want to say necessarily underperforming, just not as well as you guys wanted to do. You guys now are playing through open bracket, so you guys are no stranger to it, though. I mean, it feels like, in a way, I feel like open bracket's not even a bad thing, because it gives you a chance to like get your reps in. You're going to practice more on LAN. You're going to, once you get to pool play, you've got more reps under your belt as a team. How do you feel about your current position right now, playing through open for London?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much the same mindset as prior to Charlotte. Like, but just the only pieces is like, I have to like get it out of my brain, is like things have been tumultuous. So like we can't, as a team, like we can't look at that as the reason why things have been bad. If you go rewatch like that Thursday, like because we've been trying, because that Thursday in that cup, like that show, like that's how we can play. Like we know that.
It was all 3-0s for a couple of rounds in the lower bracket.
We were playing really good. And then, you know, running the Sin, and did we play SSG? Like even SSG on Sunday, like we played pretty well against them. Like I don't like saying that we played well when we lost, but it's like, obviously, you know, we got to go.
It's a different feeling.
Yeah, we got to like, yeah, we're on the growth part at this point. So it's like, it's like take the wins where we can get them. And, you know, we have a few days in between, a couple scrims, and we go into that Thursday. And yeah, I mean, it was just like, that was the version that like we've all been wanting to see. So, and then, there's a 1 day break and then we go into Saturday and it was like it was like we reverted on that Saturday. And I think we all kind of felt that. We're like, all right, let's go into the next day and like play the way that we know that we can. And we just didn't. And that's obviously very frustrating. Luckily we have all the tools, we have all the capability to like go back and rewatch and hear and listen and see what was like really the reason for the difference. And just try to apply that. I mean, we have a good amount of time, so just try to apply that stuff. And obviously, when we get to like the tournament, I think all of us elevate when it comes to that environment. So I think, like I said, we have the right tools, we have the right the right minds and the right people in the right places to figure it out. It's just actually applying that type of stuff.
It's kind of ironic because going back to HES Arlington a month or two ago, you guys were destined for that one number 1 seed in open bracket, but then got put into pool play. I remember talking with Eli about that. I said, I mean, it's great to be in pools, but I almost feel like that's a disservice to these guys where they can run it up in the open bracket like they did at Charlotte and get the engine revving up again. So I'm excited for you guys in the open bracket, 100%, because I think just outside of just like the narrative and the storyline, what you guys have previously accomplished, I think you guys are a team that performs better on LAN, right? Like I think of all the teams that have upside from online to LAN, I put Native at the top of that list.
Unfortunately, online matters so much in this game, and I'm not really used to that. Like, because I mean, historically, I'm kind of I was kind of a non-trier online. Even back like when I was seeing success, it was like I wanted. You got 4 games of a scrim out of me, and I was kind of like, I'm not really trying anymore.
Yeah, like, whatever, dude. I just got blood on like a triple kill potential to score the.
Well,
flag
it wasn't
on
even
pit.
like that. It was, I don't know, dude. It was just like, I mean, that stuff too, but it was just like, it's like Eco put it the best for me. Like for me, he's like, I forget when it was, but him and I were talking. He's like, dude, do you feel like you can actually try as hard as you do at home as you do it as a tournament? I was like, no. I was like, the lights aren't on. Like, I just can't. Like, I don't know why. I've tried. Like, I've legit tried. And I'd sit here and I'm just like, it's not stimulating. It's like, I'm doing the same thing that I always do. So, and a lot of the times when I'm sitting here playing, and it isn't Halo, I'm playing something else. I'm playing super chill, relaxed, like the way you guys saw me sitting with like the blanket, like that's how I'm gaming, right? So like my brain, I think when I'm sitting here scrimming, knows that I'm scrimming and is like, hey, you need to try a little bit. But then it's like, oh yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah.
So that's been one thing I've worked on really hard in this game is to like try and not be like that. And I mean, yeah, it's a pretty tough internal struggle in that sense because it's like Infinite is the first one where like I think people are going hard online pretty consistently, and scrims people go pretty hard in them. So it's one of those things where there's not as much lackadaisical play in this game that goes on. I feel like as there was for a long time. Why that changed, not sure, but it just did, and which blows my mind because this game online is hilarious. But it's like you hear stories from like Halo 3, people didn't even have Xboxes and they were just only going to TLN because they didn't want to play the game online. And I'm like, why can't we do that? Like, let's do that.
What would it be like to have a TLN in this modern era of Halo where, screw the online shit. Let's just go and LAN at one house and we'll stream it. So it's online in that sense. Great content, man. I mean,
Yeah.
The LAN network was truly, I mean, I think the LAN network was LVT Halo before LVT Halo, really, in a lot of ways, from that grassroots approach. Talk us through the early TLN days and what we could maybe do to duplicate something like that in today's Halo.
I mean, they were super far out of the time. They had like a stream, they had like Fantasy Halo and stuff like that. It's not I don't think you can really replicate it though, just because of the Pinocchios, like the way they did it. Like it was, you walked into their house and you felt like you're a part of it. They bring food, they bring drink, like it was just very like familial, and it was a very fun vibe. And I will also say back then that like pros were a lot closer. I feel like back then, like everyone was pretty friendly. Nowadays it's one of those things where there's a lot of older players and there's a lot of younger players, and I don't think there's a lot of, I don't think a lot of like the older players talk with a lot of the younger players, and there might be a few here and there, but there's some like I talked to some of them, but it's like, there's just a lot of bifurcation, I feel like, or like fragmentation. I feel like that really didn't exist back in Halo 3. It wasn't about the money. Like we were just all doing it because we wanted to. Like, and we all had like a very similar passion and interest. I'm not saying that that's not the case anymore. It's just, now it's like people just have like their tight knit group and they kind of stick to their tight knit group and that's it. So yeah, replicating that's tough. Now, the actual objectively good part of it, of like getting good reps, having lands like that, and being able to stream that, I think that that's something that is definitely missing. I would love to see that. I remember in H5 we had one called Beyond the Sticks that happened, and we went to it and we land there, and it was one other team, and the team, it was Oxygen Supremacy. They're like a top 8 team, and at the time we're like a top 3, top 2 team. And it, screaming them online would have been at that, like, if we played them online, it would have been like, I mean, just frankly, like, probably a waste of time, because we probably would have played 4 games and then that was it. But since we're there and at the LAN, like we tried the whole time, it's actually super beneficial. And I'm pretty sure that was before Daytona, and then we went to Daytona and won it. So like, I do miss that stuff. I do miss that type of practice, because that is like, for people like me, that's the best type of practice. That's the best way to do it. Get together, be in sort of an uncomfortable environment. That brings the best out of me for some reason. So yeah, I would love to see that stuff. I know Dean has discussed some ways to do it, but it's just, the logistics of it and the financials of it is tough. I know Complexity does their lands and stuff, so like they're really the only one I can think of that's done it, other than like the KCP stuff that happened in season 1. But yeah, no, I do miss it. I do miss that stuff a lot.
I wanted to make sure we got this out, because even at the very beginning of this podcast,
also joining us this week is a very special guest, Mikwen, to discuss the past, present, and future.
Hunter said your name wrong again.
PSA, you do not pronounce my name like a McDonald's sandwich. It's Mikwen. No emphasis on either syllable. It's not McQuinn or whatever I've been hearing lately. Just Mikwen. Mikwen.
He introduced your name mispronounced once again. This entire thing, Hunter, was actually for you to learn how to say his name. That's the only reason that Austin's on the podcast today.
I mean, it is funny though, because that's how Puckett said it too.
Oh, really? Maybe that's where you got it.
Yeah, it's just shades of Puckett in the casting. That's cool.
I think that's part of it too. Like, and I will say, like, I don't really care. Like, the native thing, they wanted me to just make some content, so it's like, I don't, whatever. It's kind of funny, but like,
I think there's a really good like final long form question that we could ask, and that's just from a philosophical standpoint, what would you say makes a good competitive shooter? There's been a lot of conversation recently on Twitter as it relates to the Sandbox. What would you do? Let's say if you were still working at 343, what are some ways that we could improve the competitive viability of Halo Infinite?
Oh boy.
Maybe that we save this for the next podcast. It's totally cool if you have like a lot of thoughts on
No,
it.
I mean, I can probably simplify it in a lot of ways. So like, for me, obviously this is kind of a cop-out answer, but it's not. Like, it begins and ends with the guns, your gunplay. Like, that's the most important piece. I think there's ways that you can like cheat that, right? I think Halo 5 is a good example of not having the greatest sandbox, but having a really good base kit that was mechanically skilled. So there was a skill gap there that made it ultra competitive. Obviously, we had some bad settings, but like, that game was incredibly competitive just because of the base Spartan, but the gunplay wasn't anything crazy, and the sandbox wasn't anything crazy. But yeah, for me, like, if let's just use like Infinite's Pitfalls. Like, Infinite's Pitfalls are the movement. There's not a lot of skill in the movement. Everybody can kind of do the movement. The spawn system is effectively random, so that's not very competitive. Like, the spawn system is learnable, but it's still, if 2 spawns are open, it's a 50-50 shot, whatever it's going to be, right? So effectively a random spawn system, that's just objectively not competitive in a lot of ways. There's ways that you can minimize the issues that causes, but that's, I mean, if it's random, it's never going to be fully competitive. The Sandbox is everything just feels like a linear upgrade to one another. It's like, this thing kills faster, so pick it up. That to me isn't something that creates a competitive environment. It creates a snowballing environment. Creates something where I have X gun, so therefore you lose the situation. Very similar to imagine Halo 2 was SMG starts. I remember when I played like SMG starts like Warlock and they would get 4 BRs, you lose the game. That's just the way it works. It's not competitive at all. So you have that, making sure that the sandbox is interesting to where you do want to pick things up, but it's not this like foot on your neck type feeling of like they have this gun, so therefore you lose the situation. I really like counterability. The kind of the story that like I think Halo 2 told with the shotgun and the sword was really interesting. Sword was an incredibly powerful power weapon. Had a hard counter to it in the shotgun, not necessarily online, but was definitely a strong counter to it in the actual competitive environments, or if you were a host. I would have loved to build on that, right? Like that kind of like that counter. Like let's create a line and create guns on this side, create guns on this side, and they're basically counterparts to one another, but they're not linear. It's not like, oh, here's an assault rifle, but here's a sentinel beam, which if you take the art off of it and you take the gun off of it, they're the same thing. And not masking that type of stuff. And that's where the game dev came in. I saw these things without their art, and I saw these things without their beams or their bullets. And you figure out real quick that like, oh, this thing's it's the same thing, just does more damage basically. To boil it down to that simplification is obviously disingenuous because there's a lot of work put into like the art and the animation and stuff like that. But effectively at like the just fundamental level, just making things not just linear upgrades to one another. Halo 5 was really bad about this, right? Like it was like you had the assault rifle, then there was the SMG, which is just a better automatic. The storm rifle, which was just a better automatic. Then you had the pistol, which was precision, but the battle rifle was just a better precision gun. Then the DMR was better than that. Then the light rifle was better than that. It was just like that's all it was. And sometimes it would branch, and something would be kind of close to one another. But no matter what, it was effectively better than what you started with. The only reason why that game kind of worked, in my opinion, was because you were so powerful off spawn with your movement. It wasn't necessarily your guns. I've said this before. I think that this game has probably the least skill and movement out of any Halo ever. And people will say that like, well, you didn't have a lot of movement in Halo 2 and Halo 3, and they don't know what they're talking about. Like there was the momentum jumps that you could do off streets. I mean, obviously there was wall glitching and stuff like that, but just the movement and the Gandhi hopping and all of that, the way the strafes worked in that game. And then you have Halo 3 that added had some floaty movement, but the movement, like all of that to me was more skillful than get to the ledge slide. And so there's that stuff. So that's just kind of the pitfalls of Infinite in my mind. And then if you were to just make a competitive shooter, it's like it doesn't necessarily need to be an arena game, but it's going to start with your guns and it's going to end with your guns, and then everything needs to just be built around that. Every good first-person shooter I've ever played has fun guns and good gunplay. So you could make a pretty uncompetitive game, and if the gunplay is good, people will make it a competitive version of it that maybe grows. Is another thing. I mean, Destiny's a good example. I think there's like sweats and stuff that play. The gunplay in that game is very fun, so that's why people do that.
Yeah, I think Halo 2, like even though it's the BR, like toward the end of Halo 2's lifespan, it was the BR 3.0 because you could double shot, quad shot, BXR. I've always thought it would be really cool to have a game that was built with like a FPS that was built with button combos on purpose. It's almost like a hybrid between like a shooting game and a fighting game where you've got to have that skill gap to like there's a skill gap in maximizing the value out of the gun, but there's also like a risk reward to where if you mess it up, you're actually at a disadvantage, which is exactly what like double shotting and quad shotting was.
BXB actually, I remember was at the start of was available at the launch of Infinite. Did you remember that in development? Yeah, what are your thoughts on that, Austin?
I mean, there was a couple like situations there was a couple bugs that existed. That one we knew about. We got it fixed, but that flight was just an older build before it got fixed once we found it. So it just, it just existed in that, and we knew that it was going to exist. Like one of those, like, let's send it out. People can have fun with it. But yeah, the button combo thing, I've had that conversation a lot. I've had that conversation with a lot of people I respect too. The hurdles there, from what I understand, is really just for player facing, like what's accessibility look like for this. That is the big thing in game dev of accessibility. Yeah, because I fully agree. It's like there was so much good that came from that, and they listened to a loud minority that wasn't a fan. And obviously, if you're a game dev and stuff like that, stuff is like you're breaking animations, you're doing stuff like that. If you're by the book dev, like that's not good. But
Right.
just because it's not good game dev doesn't mean it's not good gameplay.
Have thoroughly enjoyed all of the conversation up to this point. As we wind things down, we're going to run into some quick questions. These are intended to be rapid fire, but if you want to extrapolate on it, feel free. Fondest Halo memory?
Ooh, competitively, probably winning that first tournament with Ola. Fall finals. Yeah, fall finals. So that's competitively that. Fondest Halo memory as like a kid though was probably just like, I mean it's a big experience, but just the amount of like Halo that I played with like friends in person and family, like the amount of experiences I had with like my dad and my cousins and my best friends and stuff, like a lot of those are packed into like one giant memory of just like, I mean, just really like the best time of my life. Like I always say, like please take me back to 06. Is legit the best year ever, I think. And
Yeah.
it's nostalgia, but like it's, I mean, music, games, like everything about that year was just incredible. And so yeah, probably that type of stuff because it just, yeah, for nostalgic reasons, but it was a special time for me.
Now, the top 25 list caused a whole ton of controversy on Twitter. I'd like to know who's on your Halo Mount Rushmore.
Halo Mount Rushmore. Tuger, Ola, Lethal. It's always a tough one for the fourth because you could do Snipe Down, you could do Snakebite, you could do like Royalty, you could do Roy or Lunch, like you do any of those guys. But it's like tough because we've always had like duos. So it's like Roy and Lunch are synonymous with one another. Royalty and Snakebite are pretty similar. Like Snakebite's a little bit longer in longevity, but their careers, their successful part of their careers are 1-1. So, yeah, I don't out of those 6-ish, pick one of them, and it's probably the right answer. I know it's kind of a cop out, but it is probably like you can't really go wrong with any of those. But in terms of like I looked up to, Dave has to be on there too. Like if we're not going based off of like full career, like Dave is probably up there in terms of like his impact.
I thought Dave was a little low on the top 25 list, but again, that's probably a conversation for a later date. We'd love to have you on again. You mentioned a couple of different shooters. You mentioned MMOs as a big part of your foundation in gaming, but what was the foundational shooter that really stuck to you and latched onto you?
So Serious Sam and Painkiller were really important. Obviously, like Quake and Doom, like those games, I played them. And another one was Time Splitters. I was super into Time Splitters. I don't know if you guys remember that, but it was on PlayStation.
Yeah, that was fun.
That was one I played a lot. So yeah, like Quake, Painkiller, Unreal, Serious Sam, and then Time Splitters. Like all of those games were like the big FPS games I got into, and I think those games are a big reason why I'm not into like mil sims and like a lot of like the military shooters. Like I'm more into like your arcadey, like those type of games, or your arena shooters, your arcadey type shooters, those type of games. I'm not really into like the military games because, I mean, Duke Nukem, like just like funny, like gamey games. Like they weren't meant to be like a simulation. Like they're meant to just be like, this is a video game. Like, I mean, Serious Game is probably one of the most video games I've ever played to this day.
You've alluded to it probably throughout the podcast. I think we'll know what you're going to say, but what was your favorite Halo?
Halo 2. Forever and always.
Yeah. It's favorite weapon from Halo 2?
BR in that game, for sure.
Moving more along to just the whole breadth of your career, who was your favorite duo to team with throughout your entire career?
I'm not going to pick because there's only the two duos, but Chig and Ola. I mean, Chig is he's the most important player I played with probably in terms of like development for me. And Ola, like I saw the most success with Ola, but I became the player I did with Chig. So like, yeah, I'm not going to pick between those two because both of those are very big pivotal moments for my career. So yeah, and like two of my best friends. So yeah, definitely those two equal.
Two OGs and legends in their own right. Your favorite rival, the guy that you just love to compete against throughout your entire career.
Frosty's always fun to play against because he doesn't do it as much anymore, which he needs to get back to it. But just like the shit he would do in Halo 5, like shooting our logo and stuff, just like just like good like showmanship, right? Like people thought I like hated him for that. I really didn't. Like I thought it was fucking hilarious. Like it was like he's shitting on us. Like he's playing good. Like he earned that type of stuff. I wish he would do it a little bit more. Because it was really funny. Like there's this clip in Halo 5 where he is teabagging Ninja just so bad in this scrim. And Tyler dies. It's on Rig actually. Tyler dies Whitehall, and Frosty looks at him, and Ninja goes, "Don't you fucking do it! Don't you fucking do it!" And Frosty walks up to his body and looks at his body and turns around and walks away and doesn't actually like teabag him. So like the comedic timing of it was like one of the funniest things I've ever seen. It's probably on Ninja's Twitch and as a clip somewhere. As in terms of like rivalry, like I at a pro level, there's never really been anybody that's like I dislike or anything. There's people who are really fun to play against and really fun to compete against, and that's a really huge thing. But yeah, I mean, Frosty's fun to play against. Roy and Lunch were always really fun to play against. Really, I mean, those guys tested your mettle every time. Like all those like people who were just greats. You learn a lot when you play against them. You're really testing yourself and your limits. And if you're into that type of stuff, like those are the type of players that you play against in tournaments and stuff. And you're like, yeah, this is what this is all about.
Wild to hear you say that as a current, not only I say OG, I would say OG Halo Pro, but current pro. And we had T-Squared on the podcast a couple weeks ago, and we asked him what's most missing from modern day Halo. He said the exact same thing as you: the showmanship, a little bit of that trash talk, a little bit of that personality that comes through that I agree is missing. But I see guys like Woodham and I get excited and I think, okay, maybe it's coming back. And I agree. I think a little bit of showmanship could go a long way towards growing the player base and even the viewership for Halo, which is why Eli and I do this podcast, right? We want to grow the show. We want to share our passion and love for Halo and bring even more people onto the bandwagon, if you will, because Halo is not a big community, but it's very, very passionate, very heartfelt, and I think more people would stand to enjoy their lives more if they enjoyed Halo. So
yeah,
it's a little bit of the thought process behind why we do this podcast. So with that being said, Austin, any final thoughts from you? Where can we find you on socials? Let it rip.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, no final thoughts. Thanks for having me. It's great. It's always good talking with you guys. It's always fun. Socials are Mikwen. I don't really post or anything too much anymore. I'm old and grumpy, so that's I'm not into the tweeting anymore. Or sorry, the Xing or whatever the hell it is now.
It sounds wrong when you say it like that, though.
Yeah.
Like,
Zeeting?
I don't know. That sounds even worse.
But yeah, so don't really use that anymore. But yeah, it just I'm thankful that I'm still able to compete. I'm really I know I'm getting older, and I know we're probably facing the end of the road here soon at some point. But I'm thankful that I'm still able to do it, and it's been a really long road. And yeah, I'm super thankful, and I'm glad that like people like you and you guys are like picking up the torch in a lot of ways for content and doing podcasts and casting and a lot of stuff, because this is stuff the scene's definitely needed for sure for a long time, and it takes the right type of people to do it. I tried it and I wasn't very good at it, so I'm better as a guest, not a host.
Eli, any final thoughts from you, my duo? And speaking of the old days, duo since 05, any final thoughts as we depart?
No, man, this is a blast. Always love talking to you, Austin, at the tournaments, and obviously getting to do it now. I wish you guys the best. I know you just said your career, you feel like it's on the end. Nah, don't be saying that. You got plenty of years left. You're still crushing it. This dude just dropped like 50 kills in an Aqua CTF, but I anchored so hard that we still lost in matchmaking last night. But regardless,
you didn't anchor. The spawns were just somebody you stepped in fridge once. That was fine. It wasn't your fault. I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus. It wasn't your fault. I promise.
That's like me stepping in
I don't know
court.
whose fault it was, but yeah. But yeah, thanks for helping me on that. But cool, man. I can't wait to see you compete in London, and wish you the best of luck. Thanks for coming on the cast, man.
Thank you guys. Thank you for having me.
For Eli the Ninja, I'm Old Man Makowski. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of Tied to Leader. If you guys enjoyed, make sure to subscribe and follow our socials for more episodes. We do this about once a week. And if you really enjoy the content, really want to support the effort that takes a lot of time and energy, especially so in post-production. We got our editor, Killsinthenight, not only in every episode with us, but works on every episode afterward, all the graphics. If you guys want to go above and beyond and support, we do have a Patreon, which also releases these episodes 24 hours in advance of when it comes out on YouTube. So make sure to check us out there. Links in the description below. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
2 kills away. We have to switch back to Huke, who is definitely bending MVP. Picks up one. Can he find the other? One more kill for Envy. And Tom, Huke